The conference room went quiet the second Vanessa's eyes dropped to my feet. "Ethan." Her voice cut through the room like a blade wrapped in silk. "Are those the same shoes you wore last month?" I felt my stomach twist, but I kept my face still. "Yes, they are." She laughed, and the sound bounced off the glass walls. A few people around the table laughed with her, not because it was funny, but because laughing with Vanessa Hart was safer than staying silent. "This is a Fortune 500 company," she said, standing up so everyone could see her designer heels next to my scuffed, cracked leather shoes. "We represent a brand, and you're representing us in torn shoes? Do you know how that looks?" "I know how it looks," I said quietly. "Then fix it," she snapped. "This isn't a charity. Image matters here." I nodded, because nodding was easier than explaining. Easier than telling her that every spare dollar I had went somewhere else. Somewhere that mattered more than shoes. Marcus shifted beside me. I felt his knee brush mine under the table. A small, silent "I've got you" that he'd been giving me for 2 years. When the meeting finally ended, he caught up to me in the hallway. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. She humiliated you in front of the whole department." "It's shoes, Marcus. It's not the end of the world." He studied me for a second too long. "You could buy new ones, you know. It's not like you don't work hard enough to afford it." I almost told him then. Almost let the truth spill out. The hospital bills, the medication, the specialist Lily needed to see every month. But some things felt too heavy to hand to another person, even a friend. "I'll think about it," I said instead. Sophia was waiting by the elevator, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't say anything about the shoes. She just looked at me the way you look at someone you're worried about, not someone you're embarrassed for. "That wasn't okay," she said finally. "It's fine." "It's not fine, Ethan. She does this. She finds something small and picks at it until it becomes a spectacle." Sophia's voice dropped. "I've seen her do it before. It never ends well for the person on the other side of it." "I can handle Vanessa." "I know you can." She hesitated. "I just don't think you should have to." The elevator doors opened, and I stepped in, grateful for the excuse to end the conversation before it got any closer to the truth I wasn't ready to share. The drive home took 18 minutes. I used to notice things on that drive: the bakery on 5th Street, the kids playing basketball in the church lot, the sunset when it caught the windows of the old textile building. Lately I just drove, thinking about numbers, bills, balances, what was owed and what was left. My phone buzzed halfway home. A text from the hospital billing department. I didn't open it. I already knew what it said. When I got home, my mother-in-law, Carol, was in the kitchen, and Lily was on the couch, wrapped in the blanket she refused to give up even in the summer heat. "Daddy." Her voice was smaller than it used to be, but it still lit something up in my chest every time she said it. "Hey, bug." I knelt down next to her. "How was your day?" "Boring." Carol wouldn't let me watch 2 movies. "1 movie a day is the rule," Carol said from the kitchen, not even looking up. "She knows that." "I know," Lily said, smiling like she'd already won the argument anyway. I sat with her while she told me about a bird she saw outside the window, and a dream she had about a dog that could talk, and how her stomach didn't hurt as much today as it had yesterday. That last part one held onto tighter than anything else she said. "Daddy, why do you look sad?" she asked suddenly. I forced a smile. "I'm not sad. Just tired." "Is it because of your job?" "Kids notice more than we think they do." "Work was a little hard today," I admitted. "But it's nothing you need to worry about." "Someone was mean to you." I hesitated. "Someone said something about my shoes." Lily frowned, small and serious. "Your shoes are fine. I like them. They look like they've been on adventures." Something in my chest cracked open, just slightly. "Yeah," I said. "They have been on a few adventures." "Then whoever said that is wrong." I laughed, and for the first time all day, it felt real. "You're pretty smart. You know that." "I know," she said, grinning. Later that night, after Carol had gone home and Lily had fallen asleep, I sat by her bed and held her hand the way I did most nights, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing, reminding myself that this small, warm hand in mine was the only thing that mattered. I thought about Vanessa's laugh. About the way the room had laughed with her. About the shoes I couldn't afford to replace and the daughter I couldn't afford to fail. "I'm not going anywhere," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "Whatever it takes. I'm not going anywhere." I didn't know it yet, but that humiliation in the conference room wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning, the first small crack in a wall that was about to come down, one piece at a time, and not in the direction anyone at that table would have expected. 3 weeks of work led to this moment. 3 weeks of late nights, spreadsheets, and cold coffee, all building toward the presentation that could save the company $4 million a year in logistics costs. "You ready?" Marcus asked, adjusting his tie outside the boardroom. "I've practiced this thing so many times I could do it in my sleep," I said. "You should let me open," he said. "Get the board warmed up before you dive into the numbers." I hesitated. It wasn't how we'd planned it, but Marcus had a way of making things sound reasonable. "Sure, just the opening." "Trust me," he said, clapping my shoulder. "We're a team." We walked in together. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, already looking bored before anyone said a word. James Okafor and Diane Foster sat across from her, along with 3 other board members I only recognized from company photos. "Let's begin," Vanessa said. "Marcus, I understand you have something for us." I blinked. Marcus had something. Not us. Not me. Marcus stepped forward like he'd been preparing for this exact sentence his whole life. "Thank you. I'm excited to present a logistics restructuring plan I've been developing that could save this company upward of $4 million annually." My chest went cold. He clicked through the slides, my slides, walking the board through the vendor consolidation model, the shipping route optimization, the numbers I'd spent 3 weeks pulling from 6 different departments. He said I so many times I lost count. He never once looked at me. "This is exceptional work," James said. "Marcus, how long have you been developing this?" "About a month now," Marcus said. "It's been a passion project of mine." I felt my hands curl into fists under the table. I opened my mouth, and for a second, nothing came out. "Actually," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be, "I built this model." Marcus helped present it, but the analysis, the vendor research, all of it. "Ethan." Vanessa's voice sliced through mine. "This isn't the time to make this about credit. We're discussing results, not egos." "I'm not talking about ego," I said. "I'm talking about facts." "The facts are the presentation was excellent," she said. "Let's move forward." Marcus wouldn't even meet my eyes. Not once. Not when I spoke, not when the meeting ended, not when the board members shook his hand on their way out and called him impressive. I sat there, frozen, while my own work walked out of the room wearing someone else's name. Sophia caught me in the stairwell before I made it back to my desk. "Ethan, wait." "Not now, Sophia. I saw what happened in there." She stepped in front of me, blocking the door. "That was your project. Everyone in that room knew the real work was more complicated than what he presented." "Then why didn't anyone say anything?" "Because saying something means going against Vanessa," she said. "And going against Vanessa has a cost." "What is that supposed to mean?" Sophia glanced down the hallway, then lowered her voice. "There was a woman here 3 years ago. Patricia, in finance. She built an entire cost reduction model almost identical to what just happened to you. A month later, her manager took the credit, got promoted, and Patricia was restructured out of her position within a year." My stomach turned. "Are you saying Vanessa set this up?" "I'm saying I've seen this pattern before," Sophia said carefully. "Vanessa doesn't just let people get used. She rewards the ones who do the using. It keeps her surrounded by people who owe her, not people who could challenge her." "Marcus wouldn't do that to me. He's my friend." Sophia's face softened, but she didn't back down. "I hope you're right. But Ethan, watch how this plays out over the next few weeks. That's all I'm asking." I didn't answer her. I didn't know how to. I confronted Marcus at his desk before I left for the day. "Why didn't you correct her?" I asked. He didn't look up from his monitor. "Correct who about what?" "Don't do that. You know exactly what I'm talking about." He sighed, finally turning to face me. "Ethan, come on. It's not that deep. I just presented it better. You know you get nervous in front of Vanessa. That's not the point, and you know it. Look, I was going to give you credit privately. I just didn't want to make it awkward in front of the board. Awkward for who? I said. It didn't seem awkward for you at all. You're overreacting. I stared at him for a long moment, waiting for something, an apology, a flicker of guilt, anything. It never came. Forget it, I said, and walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a box I hadn't opened in almost a year. Grace's handwriting was still there on the envelope, soft and looping, the way she always wrote my name. Ethan, if you're reading this on a hard day, I want you to remember something. You are not the sum of what other people decide to see in you. Never let anyone make you forget your worth. Not your job, not your fear, not anyone in that office who forgets what it took for you to get there. I believe in you. I always will. Grace. I read it twice, then a third time. 3 years since she'd been gone, and she was still the only one who ever really saw me. Not Marcus. Not Vanessa. Grace. I folded the letter and set it down carefully, like it might break if I wasn't gentle enough. Not this time, I said quietly to the empty kitchen. I'm done staying quiet. I didn't know yet what that meant. I didn't have a plan, not really. But something had shifted in me, something that wouldn't let me walk back into that office tomorrow and pretend today hadn't happened. For the first time since Grace died, I felt something other than grief pulling me forward. I felt anger, and I finally understood how to use it. I started small, a folder on my personal drive, named something boring so no one would look twice at it. Into it went the timestamp drafts, the email threads with the vendor contacts, the shared documents that still showed my edits buried in the version history. I wasn't sure what I was building yet. I just knew I wasn't going to let the truth disappear because Marcus was better at performing than I was at defending myself. You're staying late again, old Tom said, when I passed the front desk one night around 8. Just catching up on some things. Amen. He didn't look up from his crossword. Lot of catching up happening around here lately. That Chen fellow got himself a nice corner office out of it. I stopped walking. You heard about that? I hear about everything, Tom said. Sit in this lobby long enough, you learn who actually does the work and who just knows how to talk about it. Feels like nobody upstairs can tell the difference. Tom finally looked up. Mr. Hart could always tell the difference. Mr. Hart. Robert Hart. Started this whole company from a garage, if you believe the stories. Retired now, but he still stops by sometimes. Sits right there. He nodded toward a leather chair near the window. Always remembers the ones who actually work. Every name, every face. I didn't know he still came around. Not often, but when he does, he notices things, more than people upstairs give him credit for. I didn't think much of it that night, but something about it stayed with me. He was there the following Tuesday, sitting exactly where Tom said he would be, a newspaper folded on his lap even though I doubted he was reading it. You're Ethan Cole, he said, before I even introduced myself. I stopped. Yes, sir. Have we met? No. But Tom mentioned you. Robert gestured to the seat across from him. Sit, if you have a minute. I sat, feeling oddly like I was walking into an interview I hadn't prepared for. I hear you built the logistics model, Robert said. The one that saved this company $4 million. My throat tightened. I did, though it seems most people think Marcus Chen built it. I don't put much stock in what most people think, Robert said. I put stock in numbers and in patterns. You want to tell me what actually happened? I hesitated, then told him. All of it, the presentation, Marcus taking credit, Vanessa shutting me down when I tried to correct the record. Robert listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. Why are you telling me this instead of filing a formal complaint? He asked when I finished. Would a formal complaint even matter? Vanessa runs this place. My daughter runs this company, Robert said, and something tightened in his jaw when he said it. That doesn't mean she runs it well. I didn't know what to say to that. Let me ask you something else, Robert said. If you had proof, real proof, what would you do with it? I don't know yet, I admitted. I haven't decided if I want revenge or just the truth to matter. Robert studied me for a long moment. Come find me again next week. Same time. Why? Because I think you might be one of the ones worth watching, he said. And I don't say that often. The following week, a new name started circulating through the office. Nathan Price, an executive from the Chicago branch, brought in to support leadership transition planning. Nobody said it outright, but everyone understood what that meant. Somebody upstairs was already thinking about what came after Vanessa, and Nathan wanted to be the answer. He's sharp, Marcus said, trying to make conversation like the last few weeks hadn't happened between us. Ivy League. Real polished. Sounds like exactly the kind of person Vanessa would want standing next to her, I said. Or replacing her, Marcus said, lowering his voice. Word is the board's getting nervous. About what? She missed the Kessler call last week. Biggest client we've got, and she didn't show. Sent an assistant instead. I hadn't heard that. Skipped it entirely. Said she had a scheduling conflict. Diane Foster wasn't happy. Neither was James. I thought about Robert's question. If you had proof, what would you do with it? I still didn't have an answer. But watching Vanessa's carelessness pile up, week after week, I started to wonder if I wouldn't need to do anything at all. Maybe I just needed to wait and pay attention the way Tom did. The way Robert did. When I met Robert again the following Tuesday, he didn't ask about the project this time. Tell me about your daughter, he said instead. I blinked, caught off guard. How do you know about Lily? I asked Tom. He knows things. Robert allowed a small smile. You work through this much humiliation without walking out the door. There's usually a reason bigger than a paycheck. She's sick, I said quietly. Has been for 2 years. The shoes everyone laughed at. That money went to her hospital bills instead. Robert was quiet for a moment. You didn't tell anyone that. Didn't think it was anyone's business. That, Robert said, is exactly the difference between you and people like Nathan Price. He'd have told the whole boardroom, hoping for sympathy votes. He leaned back. Keep gathering what you're gathering, Ethan. Keep your head down, and keep showing up, even when it's hard. I have a feeling this company is about to need someone who does exactly that. I didn't fully understand what he meant. Not yet, but I left that lobby feeling, for the first time in weeks, like someone powerful was finally paying attention, and like maybe, just maybe, the ground under Vanessa's feet wasn't as solid as she thought. The Kessler account walked away on a Thursday. I heard about it before Vanessa even sent the company-wide email trying to spin it as a mutual parting of business interests. They didn't part, Sophia told me in the break room, voice low. They fired us. Said Vanessa missed 2 calls and sent unprepared representatives to the last meeting. $12 million a year, gone. That's the biggest client we have. Had, Sophia corrected. By Friday, the whispers had turned into something louder. Someone in accounting mentioned a strategy deck from 2 years ago that Vanessa had presented as her own, originally built by a woman named Patricia, the same Patricia Sophia had told me about weeks earlier. It's not just you, Sophia said, catching me by the elevator. I've been asking around quietly. There are at least 3 other people who've had ideas absorbed by people close to Vanessa over the years. Patricia was just the one who got pushed out entirely. Why hasn't anyone said anything before now? Because before now, nobody had proof, and nobody had someone like Robert Hart quietly listening. The next board meeting felt different the moment I walked past the glass doors. Diane Foster was already sitting with a folder in front of her, arms crossed, jaw set. I'd like an explanation, Diane said, before Vanessa had even finished sitting down, for why we lost Kessler Manufacturing. There was a scheduling issue, Vanessa said smoothly. It's being handled. A $12 million scheduling issue, Diane said. James, are we not going to discuss this properly? James Okafor folded his hands on the table. I think it's time we did discuss it properly. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward me, sharp and searching, like she already sensed something coming. Actually, I said, my heart hammering but my voice steady, there's something I'd like to bring to the board's attention, if I may. This isn't the appropriate meeting for personal grievances, Vanessa said quickly. It's not personal, I said. It's documented. I opened the folder I'd carried in, timestamp drafts, The original vendor emails, the shared document history that clearly showed my name on every edit for 3 weeks straight, long before Marcus had ever seen the file. I built the logistics restructuring model presented last month, I said. Every draft, every revision, every piece of vendor communication is here. I'm not asking for an apology. I'm asking the board to look at the facts. Diane flipped through the pages slowly. This is thorough. He's trying to undermine a colleague because he's bitter, Vanessa said. This is exactly the kind of pettiness I've had to manage. I can confirm the timeline, Sophia said, stepping forward from where she'd been quietly standing near the door. I was in the room during several of the working sessions. Ethan built that model. Marcus presented it. Those are two very different things. The room went quiet. James looked at Sophia, then at me, then back at the folder in Diane's hands. This isn't the only account we've heard, Diane said carefully. There's a pattern here that predates you, Ethan. Vanessa's composure cracked, just slightly. This is a coordinated attack. No one is attacking you, I said. I just don't want to stay quiet anymore. Marcus found me in the hallway an hour later, and I could tell from his face he already knew what had happened in that room. You went to the board, he said, low and furious. Behind my back. I went to the board with facts, Marcus. That's different from what you did to me. You're going to destroy my career over this. You destroyed something first, I said. I'm just done pretending it didn't happen. I'll tell them you've been unstable, Marcus said, panic sharpening his voice. That you've had performance issues. That you've been distracted because of your kid. Don't, I said, something cold cutting through me. Don't you dare bring Lily into this. I'll say whatever I need to say. He tried. I found that out 2 days later, when Sophia pulled me aside with her laptop open. He emailed HR, she said. Said you've been erratic and difficult to work with for months. Said he was worried about your judgment. My stomach dropped. That's not true. I know, Sophia said, which is why I forwarded this. She turned the screen toward me. An email thread, months old, Marcus writing to a friend in another department. Ethan's carrying this whole project. I just need to be the one who presents it. He won't even notice. He saved it, I said, stunned. He actually saved it. People like Marcus always think they are smarter than the paper trail, Sophia said. They're not. The formal board session 2 days later was the most tense room I'd ever sat in. James Okafor stood at the head of the table instead of Vanessa, which told me everything before he even spoke. We've reviewed the documentation, James said. The pattern of misattributed credit, combined with recent client losses, requires a formal investigation into leadership conduct. This is absurd, Vanessa said. I built this company's reputation. You inherited this company, a voice said from the back of the room. Robert Hart stood in the doorway, cane in hand, face carved from something heavier than disappointment. I built it. Dad. I've watched you take credit for other people's work for years, Robert said, voice steady despite the tremor of age underneath it. I told myself it was ambition. I told myself you'd grow into the role. He looked at her the way a father looks at a child he no longer recognizes. I was wrong, and I am ashamed of what you've become. The silence after that was total. The board will open a formal investigation into Ms. Hart's conduct, effective immediately, James said. Ms. Hart, you're suspended from active decision-making until the investigation concludes. Vanessa didn't argue. For the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing to say. I sat there, feeling the ground shift under a company that had felt unbreakable just weeks earlier. And for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe the truth hadn't disappeared after all. Maybe it had just been waiting for the right room to land in. The investigation took 11 days. When the board reconvened, the room felt different, heavier, like everyone understood that whatever happened today would decide more than just Vanessa's future. The findings are conclusive, James Okafor said, setting a report on the table. Multiple instances of misattributed work, falsified performance reporting, and the Kessler account lost due to repeated negligence. Vanessa sat at the far end of the table, no longer at its head. Her blazer was still sharp, her makeup still perfect, but something in her posture had changed. She looked smaller. I built relationships that made this company millions, she said. You're going to throw that away over a few misunderstandings. Fabricated credit isn't a misunderstanding, Diane Foster said. It's fraud. This is a witch hunt, Vanessa snapped. Her eyes cut to me, and for a moment I saw the old fire trying to claw its way back. And of course it started with him. Look at him. Same shoes as always. A man who can't even afford to dress properly for this room, deciding is qualified to question my leadership. I felt the old sting, sharp and familiar. But this time, I looked around the table instead of down at my feet. No one laughed. Diane's jaw tightened. James's expression didn't move. Even Nathan Price, sitting near the window in his tailored suit, looked uncomfortable. Vanessa, James said quietly, I think you should stop talking. She didn't. This company needs someone who understands optics. Someone who. This company needs someone who tells the truth, Robert said from the doorway, cane tapping softly against the floor as he walked in and took a seat. You've spent your whole career worrying about how things look. Maybe that's the problem. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time since I'd known her, she had nothing left to throw. Given the findings, James said, the board is formally considering new leadership for the CEO position, effective immediately. Nathan Price straightened in his chair like he'd been waiting his entire career for this exact sentence. If I may, he said, standing. I've spent 15 years in executive leadership. I've stabilized 3 companies through crisis. I understand branding, investor relations, and how to project stability to the market during a transition like this. He smiled, practiced and smooth. This company needs someone the board and the public can trust immediately. Someone polished. Predictable. Safe. Predictable. Diane repeated slowly, like she was testing the word for weight. In a moment like this, safe is valuable, Nathan said. You don't want more surprises. James turned to me. Ethan, you've been unusually quiet. Given everything that's happened, I think it's fair to ask, what would you do differently? I felt every eye at that table land on me at once. I thought about Grace's letter. About Lily's small hand in mine at night. About the folder of evidence I never wanted to need in the first place. I'm not polished, I said. I'm not going to pretend I am. I don't have Nathan's resume, and I've never run a company before. Then why are we having this conversation? Vanessa muttered. Because Polish isn't what broke this place, I said, ignoring her. Vanessa was polished. She knew exactly how to look like a leader in front of clients and investors. What she didn't do was give credit where it was earned, or show up when it mattered, or build a team people could trust. I looked around the table. I've watched good people get pushed out of here because they weren't the ones taking bows. I've watched work get stolen and rewarded. If this company is going to survive, it doesn't need someone safe. It needs someone who tells the truth even when it costs them something. The room was silent for a moment. That's a nice sentiment, Nathan said, recovering his smile. But sentiment doesn't stabilize a stock price. Neither does a CEO who can't be trusted by her own employees, Diane said. James looked toward the doorway. Robert, you asked to speak before we move to a decision. Robert stood slowly, leaning on his cane. I've watched this company for 40 years. I've seen good people come and go, and I've seen the wrong people get rewarded for the wrong reasons more times than I'd like to admit. He looked at me. I've spent the last month talking to Ethan Cole. Not about the company. About his daughter. About his late wife. About why he kept showing up to a job that humiliated him, week after week. He turned to the board. I've never once seen him try to make himself look bigger than he is. That's rare. That's what this company needs at the top, not another version of what just failed us. You're endorsing him, James said, not quite a question. I am, Robert said. Fully and without hesitation. Vanessa let out a short, bitter laugh. Unbelievable. My own father. I built this company on people who earned their place, Robert said, not looking at her. Not people who inherited it. The silence after that word, inherited, felt like it lasted a full minute. I think, James said finally, we've heard enough to move to a vote. All those in favor of opening a formal CEO selection process with Ethan Cole and Nathan Price as the board's primary candidates, please indicate now. I watched hands begin to rise around the table, one by one, slower than I expected, faster than my heart could keep up with. Diane's hand went up first. Then two other board members I barely knew. James looked at Vanessa, whose hand stayed pressed flat against the table, refusing to move. 3 in favor, James said, counting. We need a majority. My pulse pounded in my ears as the final 2 board members exchanged a glance across the table, hesitating, their hands still resting motionless in their laps. We're waiting, Diane said quietly. Neither of them moved. The 2 remaining hands stayed still for what felt like an eternity. Then one of them, an older board member named Fitzgerald, slowly raised his. 4, James said. Everyone turned to the last board member, a quiet woman named Patel who'd barely spoken through the entire investigation. I've watched this unfold for weeks, she said finally. I don't think this is a hard decision at all. Her hand went up. 5. That's a majority, James said. The board formally opens the CEO selection process, and given the weight of today's endorsements and testimony, I'd like to propose we skip the extended search entirely. He looked around the table. All in favor of naming Ethan Cole as CEO, effective immediately. The hands rose again, one after another, until every hand at the table was in the air except Vanessa's. It's done, James said. Congratulations, Ethan. I sat there, stunned, unable to find words for a moment that felt too large for the room it was happening in. I don't know what to say, I finally managed. Say you'll do right by this place, Robert said, a small, tired smile crossing his face. That's all I need to hear. I will. Vanessa found me afterward in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold in a building that had never once been cold. I don't expect you to feel sorry for me, she said. I don't, I said honestly, but I'm not going to celebrate this either. I'm going to lose everything. The house, the car. People already stopped returning my calls this morning. She looked down, and for the first time, I saw something other than pride on her face. I'm sorry. For the shoes. For all of it. I don't even know why I did it, except that it felt like power, and I didn't have much of that left in other parts of my life. That's not an excuse. I know, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just wanted you to hear it. I nodded, and let her walk away without saying anything else. Some apologies don't need a response. They just need to exist. Marcus's resignation letter was on my desk by the end of the week, 1 line long, no explanation, no goodbye. I didn't chase him down. Some people only understand accountability when it's too late to matter, and Marcus had made his choice the day he decided silence was easier than honesty. Sophia stopped by my office that same afternoon. First official act as CEO. I've been thinking about that, I said. I want to start an emergency support fund. For employees dealing with medical costs, family emergencies, anything that puts them in the position I was in a few months ago. That's going to cost the company real money. I know, I said. But I spent 2 years eating lunch alone at my desk so I could afford Lily's treatments, wearing the same shoes until they fell apart, telling myself no one needed to know. I don't want anyone else here to feel like their struggle has to be a secret to survive. Sophia smiled. Then let's build it. Also, I said, I want you running HR policy going forward. Really running it. Not just surviving it. I'd like that, she said. I'd like that a lot. That evening, I stopped by a shoe store on my way to the hospital, something I hadn't done in longer than I wanted to admit. I could have picked anything. Instead, I called Lily first. What color should Daddy get? I asked her over the phone. Blue, she said immediately. Blue like the bird I saw outside my window. Blue it is. I walked into her hospital room an hour later, wearing shoes she'd chosen without ever seeing them, feeling lighter than I had in years despite the exhaustion sitting behind my eyes. You got them, she said, sitting up as much as her full line allowed. I got them, I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. Your choice. Blue, just like you said. They're perfect. She studied my face for a moment. Are you happy now, Daddy? I thought about the boardroom, about Vanessa's small, broken apology, about Marcus's one-line resignation, about Robert's endorsement and Sophia's steady loyalty, and the fund I was about to build for people who felt as invisible as I once had. I think I am, I said, for the first time in a long time. Good, she said, settling back against her pillow. You deserve to be. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the old, worn envelope I'd been carrying with me since the night everything started to change. Can I read you something? I asked. Is it a story? Sort of. It's from your mom. Lily's eyes went soft. Okay. I opened the letter carefully, the paper thin from years of folding and unfolding, and read it slowly, the way Grace would have wanted me to. Ethan, if you're reading this on a hard day, I want you to remember something. You are not the sum of what other people decide to see in you. Never let anyone make you forget your worth. Not your job, not your fear, not anyone in that office who forgets what it took for you to get there. I believe in you. I always will. My voice caught on the last line, the way it always did. She sounds like she loved you a lot, Lily said quietly. She did, I said. She still does, in the ways that matter. Lily reached for my hand, the same way I'd held hers every night since this whole story started. I think she'd be really proud of you, Daddy. I looked down at the new shoes on my feet, picked out by the only person whose opinion had ever mattered more to me than any boardroom, any title, any voice that had once laughed at what I didn't have. Yeah, I said, smiling through the ache in my chest. I think she would. Outside the window, the sky had turned soft and gold with the last of the evening light, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I let myself believe that the hardest part was finally behind us.